Our main story tonight concerns facial recognition, the thing that makes sure my iPhone won't open unless it sees my face or the face of any toucan. But that is it. Facial recognition technology has been showcased in TV shows and movies for years. Denzel Washington even discovered a creative use for it in the 2006 action movie Deja Vu.
We have facial recognition software?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Let's use it on the bag, cross-match it to all the bags on the south side of the city in the 48 hours leading up to the explosion, all right?
Don't think it's ever been used this way.
Look, same thing.
Bingo.
Bingo indeed, Denzel. With smart, believable plot development like that, it's frankly no wonder that Deja Vu received such glowing IMDb reviews as an insult to anybody who finished elementary school, worst movie of all time, more like Deja Poo, and my personal favourite, a one-star review that reads, Bruce Greenwood, as always, is great and so sexy, and there's a cat who survives. A review that was clearly written either by Bruce Greenwood or that cat. Now, the technology behind facial recognition has been around for years, but recently, as it's grown more sophisticated, its applications have expanded greatly. For instance, it's no longer just humans who can be the targets.
The iPhone sensor scans each fish and uses automatic image processing to uniquely identify each individual. A number of symptoms are recognized, including loser fish.
Yes, loser fish, which by the way is an actual industry term. Now that company says it can detect which fish are losers by facial scan, which is important because can you tell which one of these fish is a loser and which one is a winner? Are you sure about that? Because they're the same fish. This is why you need a computer. But the growth of facial recognition and what it's capable of brings with it a host of privacy and civil liberties issues. Because if you want a sense of just how terrifying this technology could be if it becomes part of everyday life, just watch as a Russian TV presenter demonstrates an app called Find Face.
If you find yourself in a cafe with an attractive girl and you don't have the guts to approach her, no problem. All you need is a smartphone and the application Find Face. Find new friends, take a picture, and wait for the result. Now you're already looking at her profile page.
Burn it all down. Burn everything down. I realise that this is a sentence that no one involved in creating that app ever once thought, but just imagine that from a woman's perspective. You're going about your day when suddenly you get a random message from a guy you don't know that says, "Hello, I saw you in cafe earlier and used Find Face app to learn your name and contact information. I'll pick you up from your place at 8. Don't worry, I already know where you live." But one of the biggest users of facial recognition is, perhaps unsurprisingly, law enforcement. Since 2011, the FBI has logged more than 390,000 facial recognition searches, and the databases law enforcement are pulling from include over 117 million American adults and incorporate, among other things, driver's license photos from residents of all these states. So roughly 1 in 2 of us have had our photos searched this way. And the police will argue that this is all for the best. In fact, here is an official with the London police explaining why they use it there.
Here in London, we've had the London Bridge attack, the Westminster Bridge attack. The suspects involved in that, the people who were guilty of those offences, were often known by the authorities. Had they been on some database, had they been picked up by cameras beforehand, we may have been able to prevent those atrocities, and that would definitely be a price worth paying.
Okay, look, it's hard to come out against the prevention of atrocities. This show is, and always has been, anti-atrocity. But the key question there is, what's the trade-off? If the police could guarantee that they could prevent all robberies, but the only way to do that is by having an officer stationed in every bathroom watching you every time you take a shit, I'm not sure everyone would agree that it's worth it, and the people who do might want that for reasons other than preventing crime. And now is actually a very good time to be looking at this issue because there are currently serious concerns that facial recognition is being used to identify Black Lives Matter protesters. And if that's true, it wouldn't actually be the first time, as this senior scientist at Google, Timnit Gebru, will tell you.
There was an example with the Baltimore police in the Freddie Gray marches, where they used face recognition to identify protesters. And then they try to link them up with their social media profiles and then target them for arrest. So right now, a lot of people are actually urging people not to put images of protesters on social media because there are people out there whose job is just to look up these people and target them.
It's true. During the Freddie Gray protests, police officers used facial recognition technology to look for people with outstanding warrants and arrest them, which is a pretty sinister way to undermine the right to assemble. So tonight, let's take a look at facial recognition. Let's start with the fact that even as big companies like Microsoft, Amazon, and IBM have been developing it, and governments all over the world have been happily rolling it out, there haven't been many rules or a framework in place for how it is used. In Britain, they've actually been experimenting with facial recognition zones, even putting up signs alerting you to the fact that you're about to enter one, which seems polite, but Watch what happens when one man decided he didn't actually want his face scanned.
This man didn't want to be caught by the police cameras, so he covered his face. Police stopped him, they photographed him anyway, an argument followed.
What's your suspicion?
The fact that he walked past clearly marked
I would do the
facial recognition
same.
thing and covered his face.
I would do the same.
So I walked past like that. It's a cold day as well. As I've done that, the police officers asked me to come to him, so I've got me back up. I said to him, off. I've got a now £90 fine. There you go, look at that. Thanks lads, £90. Well done.
Yeah, that Guy Ritchie character was rightly mad about that. And incidentally, if you are not British and you're looking at that man, then at me, and wondering how we both came from the same island, let me quickly explain. British people come in two variations. So emotionally stunted that they're practically comatose, and cheerfully telling large groups of policemen to fuck off and do one if you're going to take a photo of me face. There's absolutely nothing in between the two. And the UK is by no means alone in building out a system. Australia is investing heavily in a national facial biometric system called The Capability, which sounds like the name of a Netflix original movie, although that's actually perfect if you want people to notice it, think, oh, that seems interesting, and then forget it ever existed. And you don't have to imagine what this technology would look like in the hands of an authoritarian government, because China is unsurprisingly embracing it in a big way.
We can match every face with an ID card and trace all your movements back 1 week in time. We can match your face with your car, match you with your relatives, and the people you're in touch with. With enough cameras, we can know who you frequently meet.
That is a terrifying level of surveillance. Imagine the Eye of Sauron, but instead of scouring Middle-earth for the One Ring, he was just really into knowing where all his orcs like to go to dinner. And some state-funded developers in China seem weirdly oblivious to just how sinister their projects sound.
Skynet, what is that?
The Terminator is the favorite film of our founder. So they use the same name, but they want to put something good into this system.
So, okay, in the Terminator, Skynet is evil, rains down death from the sky. But in China, Skynet is good.
Yeah, that's the difference.
Oh, that's the difference, is it? You know, it's not exactly reassuring that you called your massive, all-encompassing AI network Skynet, but a good version. Because it'd be like if the Today Show built a robot journalist and called it Matt Lauer, but good. Oh yeah, this one's completely different. Sure, he does also have a button under his office desk, but all it does is release lilac air freshener. This is the good version. The point is, this technology raises troubling philosophical questions about personal freedom, and right now, there are also some very immediate practical issues, because even though it is currently being used, this technology is still very much a work in progress, and its error rate is particularly high when it comes to matching faces in real time. In fact, in the UK, when human rights researchers watched police put one such system to the test, they found that only 8 out of 42 matches were verifiably correct. And that's even before we get into the fact that these systems can have some worrying blind spots, as one MIT researcher found out when testing out numerous algorithms, including Amazon's own recognition system.
At first glance, MIT researcher Joy Buolamwini says the overall accuracy rate was high, even though all companies better detected and identified men's faces than women's. But the error rate grew as she dug deeper.
Lighter male faces were the easiest to guess the gender on, and darker female faces were the hardest.
One system couldn't even detect if she had a face, and the others misidentified her gender. White guy, no problem.
Yeah, white guy, no problem, which, yes, is the unofficial motto of history. But it's not like what we needed right now was for computers to somehow find a way to exacerbate the problem. And it gets worse. In one test, Amazon's system even failed on the face of Oprah Winfrey, someone so recognizable, her magazine only had to type the first letter of her name and your brain auto-completed the rest. And that's not all. A federal study of more than 100 facial recognition algorithms found that Asian and African American people were up to 100 times more likely to be misidentified than white men. So that is clearly concerning. And on top of all of this, some law enforcement agencies have been using these systems in ways they weren't exactly designed to be used.
In 2017, police were looking for this beer thief. The surveillance image wasn't clear enough for facial recognition software to identify him. So instead, police used a picture of a lookalike, which happened to be actor Woody Harrelson. That produced names of several possible suspects and led to an arrest.
Yeah, They used a photo of Woody Harrelson to catch a beer thief, and how dare you drag Woody Harrelson into this? This is the man that once got drunk at Wimbledon in this magnificent hat, made this facial expression in the stands, and in doing so, accidentally made tennis interesting for a day. He doesn't deserve prison for that. He deserves the Wimbledon trophy. And there have been multiple instances where investigators have had such confidence in a match, they've made disastrous mistakes. A few years back, Sri Lankan authorities mistakenly targeted this Brown University student as a suspect in a heinous crime, which made for a pretty awful finals week.
On the morning of April 25th, in the midst of finals season, I woke up in my dorm room to 35 missed calls, all frantically informing me that I had been falsely identified as one of the terrorists involved in the recent Easter attacks in my beloved motherland, Sri Lanka.
That's terrible. Finals week is already bad enough, what with staying up all night, alternating shots of 5-hour energy and Java Monster Mean Bean while trying to push your brain to remember the differences between Baroque and Rococo architecture without waking up to find out that you've also been accused of terrorism because a computer sucks at faces. Now, on the one hand, these technical issues could get smoothed out over time, but even if this technology eventually becomes perfect, we should really be asking ourselves how much we're comfortable with it being used by police, by governments, by companies, or indeed by anyone. And we should be asking that right now because we're about to cross a major line. For years, many tech companies approached facial recognition with caution. In fact, in 2011, the then chairman of Google said it was the one technology the company had held back because it could be used in a very bad way. And think about that. It was too Pandora's boxy for Silicon Valley, the world's most enthusiastic Pandora's box openers. And even some of the big companies that have developed facial recognition algorithms have designed it for use eventually becomes perfect. We should really be asking ourselves how much we're comfortable with it being used by police, by governments, by companies, or indeed by anyone. And we should be asking that right now because we're about to cross a major line. For years, many tech companies approached facial recognition with caution. In fact, in 2011, the then chairman of Google said it was the one technology the company had held back because it could be used in a very bad way. And think about that. It was too Pandora's boxy for Silicon Valley, the world's most enthusiastic Pandora's box openers. And even some of the big companies that have developed facial recognition algorithms have designed it for use on limited data sets like mugshots or driver's license photos. But now something important has changed, and it is because of this guy, Hoan Ton-Tat, and his company Clearview AI. And I'll let him describe what it does.
Quite simply, Clearview is basically a search engine for faces. So anyone in law enforcement can upload a face to the system, and it finds any other publicly available material that matches that particular face.
Okay, so monstrous mistake. Concerning, and on top of all of this, some law enforcement agencies have been using these systems in ways they weren't exactly designed to be used.
In 2017, police were looking for this beer thief. The surveillance image wasn't clear enough for facial recognition software to identify him. So instead, police used a picture of a lookalike, which happened to be actor Woody Harrelson. That produced names of several possible suspects and led to an arrest.
Yeah, they used a photo of Woody Harrelson to catch a beer thief, and how dare you drag Woody Harrelson into this? This is the man that once got drunk at Wimbledon in this magnificent hat, made this facial expression in the stands, and in doing so, accidentally made tennis interesting for a day. He doesn't deserve prison for that. He deserves the Wimbledon trophy. And there have been multiple instances where investigators have had such confidence in a match, they've made disastrous mistakes. A few years back, Sri Lankan authorities mistakenly targeted this Brown University student as a suspect in a heinous crime, which made for a pretty awful finals week.
On the morning of April 25th, in the midst of finals season, I woke up in my dorm room to 35 missed calls, all frantically informing me that I had been falsely identified as one of the terrorists involved in the recent Easter attacks in my beloved motherland, Sri Lanka.
That's terrible. Finals week is already bad enough, what with staying up all night, alternating shots of 5-hour energy and Java Monster Mean Bean while trying to push your brain to remember the differences between Baroque and Rococo architecture without waking up to find out that you've also been accused of terrorism because a computer sucks at faces. Now, on the one hand, these technical issues could get smoothed out over time, but even if this technology eventually becomes perfect, we should really be asking ourselves how much we're comfortable with it being used by police, by governments, by companies, or indeed by anyone. And we should be asking that right now because we're about to cross a major line. For years, many tech companies approached facial recognition with caution. In fact, in 2011, the then chairman of Google said it was the one technology the company had held back because it could be used in a very bad way. And think about that. It was too Pandora's boxy for Silicon Valley, the world's most enthusiastic Pandora's box openers. And even some of the big companies that have developed facial recognition algorithms have designed it for use on limited data sets like mugshots or driver's license photos. But now something important has changed, and it is because of this guy, Hoan Ton-Tat, and his company Clearview AI. And I'll let him describe what it does.
Quite simply, Clearview is basically a search engine for faces. So anyone in law enforcement can upload a face to the system, and it finds any other publicly available material that matches that particular face.
Okay, so the key phrase there is publicly available material, because Clearview says it's collected a database of 3 billion images. That is larger than any other facial recognition database in the world, and it's done that by scraping them from public-facing social media like Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram. So, for instance, Clearview's system would theoretically include this publicly available photo of Ton-Tat at what appears to be Burning Man, or this one of him wearing a suit from the exclusive Santa Claus After Dark collection at Men's Warehouse, and this very real photo of him shirtless and lighting a cigarette with blood-covered hands, which, by the way, is his profile photo on Tidal, because yes, of course, he's also a musician. I can only assume that that's the cover of an album called Automatic Skip if this ever comes up on a Pandora station. And Ton-Tat's willingness to do what others have not been willing to do, and that is scrape the whole internet for photos, has made his company a genuine game changer in the worst possible way. Just watch as he impresses a journalist by running a sample search.
So here's the photo you uploaded of me. A headshot from CNN. So first few images it's found a few different versions of that same picture. But now as we scroll down, we're starting to see pictures of me that are not from that original image. Oh, go to, wow, oh my God. So this photograph is from my local newspaper where I live in Ireland. And this photo would have been taken when I was like 16.
Wow.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it is. Although, here is some advice. If there is an embarrassing photo of you from when you were a teenager, don't run away from it. Make it the centre of your television show's promotional campaign and own it. Use the fact that your teenage years were a hormonal Stalingrad. Harness the pain. But the notion that someone can take your picture and immediately find out everything about you is alarming enough, even before you discover that over 600 law enforcement agencies have been using Clearview's service. And you're probably in that database, even if you don't know it. If a photo of you has been uploaded to the internet, there is a decent chance that Clearview has it, even if someone uploaded it without your consent, even if you untagged yourself or later set your account to private. And if you're thinking, hold on, isn't this against the terms of service for internet companies? You should know Clearview actually received cease and desist orders from Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook earlier this year, but it has refused to stop, arguing that it has a First Amendment right to harvest data from social media, which is just not at all how the First Amendment works. You might as well argue that you have an Eighth Amendment right to dress up rabbits like John Lennon. That amendment does not cover what I think you think it does. And yet, Tontat insists that this was all inevitable, so we should all frankly be glad that he's the one who did it.
I think the choice now is not between like no facial recognition and facial recognition. It's between, you know, bad facial recognition and responsible facial recognition. And we want to be in the responsible category.
Well, sure, you want to be, but are you? Because there are a lot of red flags here. For starters, apps he developed before this included one called Trump Hair, which would just add Trump's hair to a user's photo, and another called Vidiho that fished its own users, tricking them into sharing access to their Gmail account and then spanning all their contacts. So I'm not sure that I would want to trust my privacy to this guy. If, however, I was looking for someone to build an app that let me put Ron Swanson's mustache on my face as my checking account was quietly drained, sure, then he'd be the top of my list. And despite Clearview's repeated reassurances that its product is intended only for law enforcement, as if that is inherently a good thing, he's already put it in a lot of other people's hands, because in addition to users like the DEA and the FBI, he's also made it available to employees at Kohl's, Walmart, and Macy's, which has alone completed more than 6,000 facial searches. And it gets worse, because they've also reportedly tried to pitch their service to congressional candidate and white supremacist Paul Nealon, suggesting that they could help him use unconventional databases for extreme opposition research, which is a terrifying series of words to share a sentence with white supremacist. Now, Clearview says that that offer was unauthorized, but when questioned about who else he might be willing to work with, Tontat's answer hasn't been reassuring.
There's some countries that would never sell to that are very adverse to the U.S.
For example?
Like China and Russia, Iran, North Korea. So those are the things that are definitely off the table.
What about countries that think that being gay should be illegal, it's a crime?
So like I said, you know, we want to make sure that we do everything correctly, mainly focus on the US and Canada. And the interest has been overwhelming, to be honest. Just so much interest that, you know, we're taking it one day at a time.
Yeah, that's not terribly comforting. When you ask a farmer if he'd let foxes into the hen house, the answer you hope for is no, not the interest from foxes has been overwhelming, to be honest, just so much interest. So, you know, we're taking it one day at a time. And unsurprisingly, reporters for BuzzFeed have found that Clearview has quietly offered its services to entities in Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, countries that view human rights laws with the same level of respect that Clearview seems to have for Facebook's terms of service. So facial recognition technology is already here. The question is, what can we do about it? Well, some are trying to find ways to thwart the cameras themselves.
Hi guys, it's me Jillian again with a new makeup tutorial. Today's topic is how to hide from cameras.
Okay, first, that's probably not a scalable solution, and second, I'm not sure if that makes you less identifiable or the most identifiable person on Earth. Officers are on the lookout for a young woman, dark hair, medium build, looks like a mime who went through a shredder. Look, clearly, what we really need to do is put limits on how this technology can be used, and some locations have laws in place already. San Francisco banned facial recognition last year, but the scope of that is limited to city law enforcement. It doesn't affect state and federal use or private companies. Meanwhile, Illinois has a law requiring companies to obtain written permission before collecting a person's fingerprints, facial scans, or other identifying biological characteristics, and that is good. But we also need a comprehensive nationwide policy, and we need it right now, because again, there are worries that it is being used in the protests that we are seeing now. And the good news is that just this week, thanks to those protests and to years of work by activists, some companies did pull back from facial recognition. For instance, IBM says they'll no longer develop facial recognition. Meanwhile, Amazon said it was putting a 1-year hold on working with law enforcement. And Microsoft said it wouldn't sell its technology to police without federal regulation. But there is nothing to stop those companies from changing their mind if people's outrage dies down. And for the record, while Clearview says it's cancelling its private contracts, it's also said it will keep working with the police, just as it will keep harvesting your photos from the internet. So if Clearview is going to keep grabbing our photos, at the very least, there may be a way to let them know what you think about that. So the next time you feel the need to upload a photo, maybe throw in an extra one for them to collect. Maybe hold up a sign that says, these photos were taken unwillingly and I'd rather you not be looking at them. Or if that feels too complicated, just fuck Clearview. That really does get the message across. And remember, these photos are often being searched by law enforcement, so you may want to take this opportunity to talk to the investigators looking through your photos. Maybe something like, I don't look like Woody Harrelson, but while I have your attention, defund the police. Really, whatever you feel is most important to tell them, you should put on a sign. That's our show. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next week. Good night.
In case you missed it, let me know what you think in the comments. Go to YouTube, frontlinegaming.org. What did 8th edition mean to you? Was it your favorite edition? Was it your least favorite edition? What did you hate about it? What did you like about it? I'd love to talk about this and have an open conversation about it. I think it's important, especially in a game like this, to think and look back on the past and reflect on that. Because this game is constantly improving, and our dream is to one day take it to a level that currently we're not at. So let me know, get your introspection hats on, and keep those conversations polite. All right. If you're unfamiliar with this podcast, at the end of every episode, we like to open the floor to the patrons, where the patrons get to ask us questions about whatever. Sometimes it has to do with the topic. Sometimes it doesn't have to do with anything at all. And we answer them live here. So if that was something that interests you, in addition to all of the fun giveaways and exclusive content we put out, and you want to support the podcast, head on over to patreon.com/chapterdactics. All right. So first things first. First patron question goes to Mr. Tim. How did 8th change the community for the better and for the worse? I think we just talked about it.
I wonder. I think the answer may lie about 30 minutes that way.
Yeah. So here's an interesting. Tim, we did answer your question. I apologize, buddy. But is there anything about 8th edition that changed the community for the worse?
See, what Pablo did was he read your question, had us answer it on the podcast, and now he's having to go back.
I don't pre-scan these questions. I just unless they're real, I just read them right as I'm about to read them.
If you want Pablo to read something funny on air,
I definitely
can be Bart Simpson doing a prank call.
I definitely have. Anyways, but obviously, that aside, was there anything about 8th edition that you think maybe made the community worse, or I guess Space Marine players, but
they always make the community worse.
Until there was, I think something that really did happen was there was a time where there was no shits given if you didn't have your stuff painted, and it kind of devolved to a stage where some of the stuff that we were seeing were people trying to be really competitive and bringing the weirdest proxies and stuff to tournaments to try and win the games, playing with the most crazy random coffee cups, straw pods, or whatever style stuff. And I think that was that brought the worst in people in that sense. The new flavor of the week meta list or whatever, it kind of forced people to try and adapt so quickly at such a high rate that it really sort of had people kind of really cut corners when it came to the hobby aspect. And it took a while for people to be okay, foot down. That is not a chaplain dreadnought. That is a freaking just a potato head on a dreadnought base, for example.
Yeah, the speed that the meta was changing at was good that GW was fixing problems that quickly, but it was causing people to have to abandon lists so rapidly that it definitely became like nigh impossible to keep up with at a couple points.
Yeah, that's fair. Those are fair criticisms, and I would even argue that those might even be holdouts from 7th edition. But yeah, the competitive community definitely stepped up in terms of people playing and being competitive, and all the positives and negatives that would be associated with that did come into fruition. All right, next question from Mr. Patron Nathaniel. What do you think the greatest impact is that 9th has had on the hobby, and will or will not be carried on into 9th? I'm sorry. What do you think the greatest impact is that 8th edition has had on the hobby, and will or will not be carried on into 9th edition? So greatest impact, and will we see it in 9th?
Greatest impact in the hobby, I think is
the game in general. Like
the hobby encompassing the game in general.
Yeah.
The greatest impact, to be honest, has been how globalized 40k has become. In terms of, like, it has, in the 3 years of 8th edition, I have learned more about the way that people play 40k all over the globe than I ever have, and it's incredible that you could literally look at a spreadsheet and be like, well, let's take a look at what the lists are in Australia, or let's take a look at what's happening in Europe, and more it's sort of like creating a global 40k community instead of such a regionalized, like, isolated series of communities.
Yeah, I think for my part, the depth of consideration for what the rules mean for the players is a huge thing. Looking at it and saying, like, okay, here's how we're changing this rule, this is how it's going to affect people, and then that's going to have sort of the knock-on effect of doing this as well. Stuff like removing Overwatch as a general thing. It's like, it's not just about the direct game effect, it's also about how that game effect affects everything else you do in the game, and all that sort of thing. I think that is a really important thing, because this game is so complex. You can't just consider those, like, first level changes. You have to look at how it echoes down to other places in the game.
Yeah, I agree. I actually think, and this is a little bit negative, and I'm sure this is going to raise some controversy in the comments, but I actually think the biggest impact that 8th edition had was the Space Marine Codex. Now, metas impact 40k for years. Like, think about the grade. People still talk about the 5th edition Grey Knights, how powerful they were. Matt Ward is an entire meme unto himself because of it. Right? So, with this, Space Marines came out, we're talking about them, they're overpowered. Their 9th edition isn't going to change them, especially if 8th edition is factions don't get fixed over an edition, they have to get fixed in codexes and over time. The Space Marines being this powerful is going to have a lasting impact on the game. Now, whether it's going to be super negative or super positive, I don't know, but in terms of impact, we're going to be talking about Space Marines like 10 years down the road. People are going to be like, oh, Space Marines are OP, and you're like, well, was 2020 the last time you played Warhammer 40k? And they're like, yeah, how did you know? And you're like, well, Space Marines were good back then. And it's not just going to come out in the game, it's also going to come then. And they're like, yeah, how did you pee? And you're like, well, talking about Space Marines like 10 years down the road. People are going to be like, oh, Space Marines are OP. And you're like, well, was 2020 the last time you played Warhammer 40k? And they're like, yeah, how did you know? And you're like, well, Space Marines were good back then. And it's not just going to come out in the game, it's also going to come out in media. They're going to see these bloated Space Marine sales, more bloated than they already were. Space Marines are already selling phenomenally well. But GW is going to look at these bloated Space Marine sales and think, well, I guess we got to make more lieutenants. Clearly, Space Marines, people love Space Marines, so keep up. Eventually they'll have a 50th anniversary lieutenant, where it's the 50th anniversary of, it's the 50th lieutenant of all the Space Marine Primaris lieutenants. But joking aside, I think it's going to have an impact on their future IP, their media, what they give us content-wise, and how people perceive the whole idea of 40k as a whole. You know, if you think that Space Marines are the poster child now, you know, just wait a year or two from now when they're still the most powerful faction, and GW thinks that Space Marine sales drive, and maybe they do, right? Because they're very powerful. Newer players will gravitate towards Space Marines more, which means new players will buy Space Marines and be more interested in Space Marine content, right? So they'll naturally want to read about the models they just bought, right? So Space Marine books that are new are going to come. Anyways, that's my biggest impact. That was a long-winded answer, but you know, I got a bone to pick. Okay. Next question. Patron Ant wants to know, at the start of 8th, what was the biggest change from 7th you disagreed with and agreed with? So, what was the biggest change from 7th to 8th that you both disagreed with? Because I think we talked about the change that we liked.
Now, what did I disagree with when it came to 8th edition? You know, to be honest, when I looked at 8th edition, I was like, thank effing goodness I don't have to play against Riptide Wing anymore. Like, I was, or that I think one of the biggest controversies was like characters not being able to join units anymore, right? But I mean, not having to play Riptide Wing, or not having to play against, you know, a million free rhinos, or like, that was like when I jumped into 8th edition full blown. There was nothing you tell me that was bad about 8th. I just jumped into it and I was like, this is not 7th! Yay!
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Star. You know, going from 7th to 8th edition, I had almost no qualms. The index, I guess something that maybe had a small concern with was the removal of the models that I had made, like the space, like the chaplain on bike or the command squad on bikes. But even at the beginning of the edition, you had them, and GW was like up front. They were like, "Hey, look, these aren't going to stick around, so like, you know, have fun with them in the index, but they're going to go away." And so I was like, "Okay, like that sucks, but you know, like, thank you for the warning, GW. I'll sell them on eBay."
I think you know, okay, in hindsight, something that was a little like at the beginning of 8th edition was everything was really bland. So it was like, you know, your hero gave you reroll once. This gave you, so it was like there was not really any flavor when the indexes came out. And I think that would be like the only thing. Like, it was a stopgap until they started like releasing codexes. However, if there was anything, it was like, okay, oh, is that your hero that rules once? Yes, this is my hero that rules once. You know, that was, unless you were Gulliman, in which case it was ridiculous. But
yeah. I think the one thing that I was not a big fan of was not the actual removal of universal special rules, because those were kind of a mess, but the 900 different variations of the same rule, which all had a little bit different wording. You know, you can reroll ones versus you must reroll ones versus you can reroll ones in the shooting phase versus you can reroll ones for models within 6 inches versus, you know, and they're all really the same ability, but they're all just different enough that they will catch you off guard. That could be very frustrating.
Oh yeah, I mean, that's fair. That's a really fair. And in 7th edition, as bloated and messy as 7th edition was, you know, there were universal special rules. There were, you know, like something had something this rule. That's what it was. There was no question about it. You know, but anyways, that's it. That's all the Patreon questions. There weren't a lot this week. That was mostly my fault. But anyways, if you're interested in that, you've been supporting the podcast, you know, shoot us a subscription over at Patreon. Also, Scary, if you're interested in listening to him, Scary, where can they find you?
You can find me on YouTube at Scodcast on YouTube. Do battle reports, and as soon as 9th hits, you can expect a whole bunch of cool 9th edition stuff, like how to play 9th edition and tactics videos and a whole bunch of stuff. Just stay tuned. It's gonna be intense. I'm not gonna sleep. It's gonna be great.
Right on. And then Sean, are there any plugs you want to give away? give up?
I'm still doing writing for Frontline, so you can check out all my articles there. I do a weekly piece of some kind or another, usually on a specific unit or faction. And once 9th really starts, we start seeing some more actual rules, we are going to be starting up in the Finest Hour again. But we're kind of on hiatus right now, so there's not a lot to see there at the current moment.
Perfect. And then one final shout out, if you're interested into the Honest Wargamer on Twitch, I've been streaming there on weekends. I've also been streaming live video games randomly on weekends to patrons and on Discord. That's been a lot of fun. So if you're interested in any of that, head on over to the Honest Wargamer. Rob has been streaming every single day since this began. His stream streak is in 100-day, 130, which just shows how long we've been how long we've had to deal with COVID. So it's super cool. Help him keep that stream streak alive. Go check out the Honest Wargamer on Twitch, and also maybe you can play some games with us or watch us play games and have a great time. That is all. Thank you all for listening. You are all, of course, the best listeners in the world, and as always, have a good one.
Sie sind weiß, frustriert und wütend. Und sie wollen einen Mann zum Präsidenten der USA machen.
Wir wählen Trump. Er ist der Moses, unser Retter in der Not für Buchanan County.
Trumps Wähler fühlen sich von der Politik im Stich gelassen, wie hier in Texas an der Grenze zu Mexiko.
Illegale Einwanderer kommen hier ungehindert über die Grenze.
Sie haben das Gefühl, dass früher alles besser war. Auch im Kohlegebiet von Virginia, wo Jobs rar geworden sind und die Menschen sich keinen Arzt mehr leisten können.
Die Leute wählen den, der uns die Jobs zurückbringt.
Die Focus-TV-Reportage über Amerikas Wutbürger. Hudspeth County in Texas. Hier haben bei den Vorwahlen fast alle Menschen für Donald Trump gestimmt. Sein größter Fan in dem dünn besiedelten Landkreis ist Maria Lupe Dempsey. Die 63-jährige Texanerin ist die örtliche Vorsitzende der Republikanischen Partei und wohnt direkt an der Grenze zu Mexiko.
Mexiko beginnt gleich da drüben. Das hier ist Süden und dort drüben ist Norden. Die Grenze verläuft parallel, dort wo die Zedern wachsen und der Rio Grande fließt. Die Berge liegen schon in Mexiko.
Hudspeth County in Texas hat etwa die Größe von Schleswig-Holstein, aber nur 3.400 Einwohner. 94% davon sind weiß. Die Grenze zu Mexiko, über 98 Meilen, bestimmt immer mehr ihren Alltag. Hier will Donald Trump eines seiner wichtigsten Wahlversprechen wahrmachen und eine riesige Mauer bauen. Maria Lupe befürwortet diesen Plan. Denn vor ihrer Tür herrscht ein regelrechter Drogenkrieg. Aus Mexiko kommt der Stoff, an dem so viele Amerikaner sterben. Und jedes Jahr überqueren Hunderttausende Latinos illegal die Grenze. Viele davon sterben in der Hitze.
Wir haben schon oft illegale Einwanderer vor dem Tod bewahrt. Einige haben halb verdurstet an unsere Tür geklopft. Wir haben sie natürlich notversorgt.
In Hudspeth County ist jeder Bürger bewaffnet. Auch Marias Mann, Bill. Am Gürtel hängt ein 45er Colt. In Cowboystiefel steckt eine weitere Pistole. Auch Bill ist Trump-Fan.
Ich hoffe verdammt nochmal, dass Hillary nicht gewinnt. Das wäre ein Albtraum. Sie ist ja noch schlimmer als der jetzige Idiot im Weißen Haus. Ich mochte Trump von Anfang an. Viele waren in den Vorwahlen für Ted Cruz, aber ich war schon immer für Trump.
Was mögen Sie an ihm?
Vieles. Er redet Klartext.
Bill und seine Frau leben in diesem 600 Quadratmeter großen Bungalow. Genügend Platz für eine beachtliche Waffensammlung. Die beiden sind konservativ. Sie glauben an das Recht auf Waffen und an Gott. Die Texanerin mit mexikanischen Wurzeln und der Trucker aus Georgia sind seit 2007 verheiratet. Maria Lupe arbeitet als Übersetzerin bei Gericht. Früher war sie Ermittlerin und bekämpfte Drogen- und Menschenschmuggler. Die Texanerin hält die Einwanderungspolitik der Obama-Regierung im fernen Washington für völlig gescheitert.
Wenn wir unsere Grenzen nicht besser schützen und strengere Einwanderungsgesetze erlassen, dann wird alles noch schlimmer. Dazu kommen noch Terroristen aus anderen Ländern, die nur ein Ziel haben: Amerika zu zerstören. Terroristen könnten problemlos über Mexiko ins Land kommen. Niemand würde es merken.
Wie leicht es ist, unentdeckt von Mexiko in die USA zu gelangen, das will Lupe uns zeigen. Doch zuvor ruft sie ihren Mann an. Eine Sicherheitsmaßnahme.
Liebling, wir fahren runter zum Fluss, zur kleinen Brücke. Kommst du gleich nach? Okay, bis gleich. Mein Mann besteht darauf, dass ich nie alleine hierher komme. Man weiß nie, wer einem über den Weg läuft.
Die Texanerin parkt ihr Auto mitten in der Wüste. Bills schwarzer Pickup nähert sich schon. Es sind nur noch wenige Meter bis zur Grenze. In diesem gottverlassenen Landstrich gibt es weder Grenzpolizisten noch einen Zaun. Mexiko beginnt genau hier, in der Mitte des Rio Grande.
Das ist die internationale Außengrenze der USA, im Wasser.
Obamas angeblich sichere Grenze.
Ja, sehr sicher. Ich würde mich besser fühlen, wenn hier eine Mauer stünde. Die Hälfte des Flusses ist Mexiko. Die andere Hälfte gehört zu uns.
Menschen kommen hier ständig illegal rüber. Obama und Hillary geben das nicht zu. Aber es ist so.
Trumps Wähler. Es sind wütende Bürger wie Bill und Lupe, die sich von der Regierung im Stich gelassen fühlen. Die Interstate 10. Hilfs-Sheriff Robert Newman ist auf Patrouille. Seine Aufgabe: Drogenschmuggler und illegale Einwanderer aufgreifen. Nicht leicht in einem Areal von fast 12.000 Quadratkilometern.
Wir haben es hier mit gewalttätigen Kartellen zu tun. Die schmuggeln Menschen und Drogen ein. Wir entdecken oft Leichen in der Wüste oder finden Frauen, die von ihren Schleusern vergewaltigt und zurückgelassen wurden. Dort drüben gab es schon viele Schießereien.
Eine davon ist in diesem Polizeivideo aus dem Jahr 2006 festgehalten. Aufgenommen vom Sheriff in Hudspeth County. Es zeigt den Polizeialltag an der Grenze. Ein US-Beamter verfolgt mexikanische Drogenkuriere. Die sind in gestohlenen Autos unterwegs. Die Ermittler beschlagnahmen 500 Pfund Marihuana. Ein Schmuggler bleibt auf der Flucht mit seinem Wagen im Rio Grande stecken. Ihm gelingt es, die Beute auf mexikanischer Seite wieder auszuladen. Dabei eilen ihm Männer aus einem Militärfahrzeug zu Hilfe. Kurz darauf setzen sie das Auto in Brand. Könnte eine Mauer an der Grenze den Drogenschmuggel eindämmen? Robert Newman ist skeptisch und zeigt warum. Es gibt hier bereits einen Zaun.
Das ist ein Teilabschnitt des Zauns. Er erstreckt sich 3-4 Meilen entlang der Grenze, aber dann endet er einfach. Ich denke, das meint Trump, wenn er von einer Mauer spricht.
Jurassic Park Zaun nennen Einwohner die 6 Meter hohe Grenzanlage, die entlang des Rio Grande in den Boden gerammt wurde. Dort, wo der Grenzfluss besonders dicht an der Interstate 10 verläuft. Das Stahlkonstrukt hat riesige Lücken. Es wurde nur über ein Drittel der 3000 Kilometer langen Grenze zwischen Mexiko und den USA gebaut und verschlang Millionen Steuergelder. Robert Newman findet das Ganze absurd.
Der Zaun endet hier. Was passiert die nächsten 20 Meilen? Nichts. Die Schmuggler umgehen ihn einfach. Das ist doch absurd. Aber auch ein Zaun bis nach Kalifornien wäre keine Lösung.
Der Befürworter einer solchen Abschottung hat seine Ideen monatelang auf allen Kanälen verbreitet. Donald